getting your own story, I was very shocked by this, profoundly shocked. And that's why my first question to you, Jurri, was how much did you know about me before you wrote this? It caught me off guard, and it was quite a fun adventure. I'm really loving it, and I'll be watching it again. I'm so excited about my new freedom and my new liberty and all the affirmations that you spoke to my life. I'm usually the encouraging person in people's lives. This has been a huge encouragement to me, Jurri. You clearly have a gift of hearing from the Lord, and I affirm that, and I can tell everybody that you and I have not exchanged any biographical information about each other before this, which affirms a really super unique gifting that you have, and I applaud you, and I'm excited about seeing it blossom further.
It's a life-altering, encouraging word that will change your life forever if you apply it, and it's totally worth the investment to do it. Don't hesitate. Don't wonder, is this right for me? Is this the right time for me? Just do it now, because you need the encouragement now. Don't wait.
And as far as the podcast goes and becoming a legend, I encourage everyone to really just pray and talk to God about it. And if you feel led to get or to sign up to get one, I strongly encourage it, because not only did this edify what God is doing in my life, but it also gave me the ability to share what he's done in my life with you guys, so that if any of you needed to hear specific things that were said by either the story or by the guest, that it really allows people to hear that, and it really allows them to get your story on top of the story that you wrote with us.
Brilliantly said. Thank you, John.
I would just recommend it to get a story, because it's the most unique thing I've heard of, but it is so anointed. So I would do it for two reasons. One is because it's anointed and you're hearing from God, and that in itself is a beautiful thing, to have God use somebody else to tell you something about yourself. So I would do it for that. And I also would do it to spur another person's passion to help sow into what you're doing, because we need people like you who are pioneers, who are boundary pushers, who want to pursue something not everyone's pursuing. We want to give you encouragement, and we want to love on you, and that's one way we can do it, since we don't get to see you in person.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
This was such an amazing experience, honestly, and I am so grateful that literally the Lord has given you this gift, because it really is powerful and impacting for me tonight. And I'm sure by just me hearing you just read my story to me, it was so touching, and it's what I needed to hear for this week. And I know a lot of people felt that way if they've come on your show, so I definitely thank you so much for your work, and definitely just keep staying in this field. It is a true blessing. Thank you.
Wow, man, Lacey, thank you for saying that. And welcome to the Legends of the Wind podcast. I'm Jurri Schenck. Thank you for joining us tonight. It is a pleasure to have you here in our audience. It's so cool to bring people revelation through storytelling, where we combine the prophetic with the arts and the creative arts. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm excited to bring my guest, Melissa Scott, on the show in a few moments. Her story is called The Vanished Dream. And I'm sure it's going to be a powerful time of emotional encouragement and strength. So bless you, Melissa, and bless you in the audience. Thank you very much, everyone. Just so that you know, if you are new to the audience, would you mind hitting the subscribe button and the like button and hit the notification bell so that YouTube will know that more people are watching our show? We are in a building season, and we hope to get more people aware of what we're doing and to appreciate the special uniqueness of what we're creating here for people. Now, just so you know, for those of you who don't understand, we create prophetic stories here. And I want you to realize that prophetic storytelling is not the same thing as prophetic words in ministry. Like I said, we are combining the prophetic gift with the creative arts. And so it's a creation built for you. Like if the painting behind me, done by my wife, Alisha, she does prophetic art. And we use our time and our talent and our gifting to create something that's anointed, but yet it's something that we sell and we provide as a service or as a gift to people. And these stories that I write for our guests are like a portrait, yet it's in story form. So I hope that it makes sense to you. And the money that we charge for the fee puts together this show and helps us out to reach more people. So thank you very much for your understanding. Now, our guest, we're going to want to get into the story pretty quick. So our guest is Melissa. I'm going to bring her in. Melissa, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us tonight. How are you?
Thank you. Good.
Good. Well, thank you.
How are you?
Good. Thank you. Thank you for being our guest. I want to let people know who are watching. Have I ever met you before tonight?
No.
And have you ever sent me any biographical information about yourself at all?
No, I haven't.
Right. So this is great because I get nervous every show. I've done this a lot for a while now, and every time it makes me nervous because I just met you and I wrote you your prophetic story, and so I get a little anxious and everything. But I also know that God's given me a good track record of helping people with these prophetic stories. So I want you to know that my heart to you is to create a safe space for you to be strengthened and encouraged, where you can have an aha moment, a revelation, an encounter with God, where you are finding hope and on your journey. Okay? So why don't you introduce yourselves to the audience? Tell us a little bit about you and anything that you want to share.
Okay. I'm Melissa Scott. I have a husband and a 9-year-old daughter. Recently moved a year and a half ago from San Diego back to Minnesota after spending 15 years in San Diego. I had a very busy corporate career there, and I more or less left that behind me in moving back to Minnesota. I still work in the field, educated and worked in, but more in a consulting capacity, which has allowed me to shut my laptop off after 8 hours and summers off, take different time off during different seasons. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. Has been really transitioning just to a lot of weather and getting settled and moved in and all of that good stuff and making new friends. So yeah.
Well, great. I was sharing with Melissa just before the show got on the air that my wife and daughter and I also left California some years ago, 4 years ago, and yeah, we're really not happy with the long snowy season either. So we had faced a similar transition in some way from our industry there as well. So, well, thank you very much for sharing a little bit about yourself and your family. So we're going to go into your story, but before I do, real quick, I want you and the audience to understand, how do you receive a prophetic story? These stories are not to be understood literally. These stories are to be understood symbolically, which means that they have hidden treasures of meaning inside the story. Now, the story is a revelation, and when we're done reading the story and I have a conversation with you, that's our interpretation time. That's when we get to unpack the hidden meanings in the story. And then hopefully we can find the application, what you do to take away from that revelation in your story. Okay? So you have power, Melissa. You have the opportunity to say, yes, I accept this story, or no, I do not. Or you say, I need time to process this. Okay? So that you have that choice and that power. And all I want to do is to bring life to you in this story. Okay?
Okay.
Very good. So let's just dive right in. By the way, before we do that, real quick, the chat's already is chiming in. Gail is saying hello. And Mike Smith says, hi, Jurri and Melissa. Guys, thanks for being part of the chat. We welcome the chat to be part of the conversation and add their thoughts and ask their questions. Okay? Melissa, you ready?
All right.
Okay, it's story
Yes.
time. Here we go.
All right.
The Vanished Dream. There were liars that surrounded Melissa in one of her greatest losses. The relationship and opportunity were gone, and this plan Melissa had was no longer possible. Although she paid a great price to come this far, there seemed an even greater price to pay coming her way. It was about debt. Not merely a financial loss, but a promise that she could not fulfill. This situation brought her to today. This situation is now about her journey back to the way home. Today, Melissa woke up to the smell of hot coffee brewing from the kitchen with her automated machine. It was the perfect deep roast she always loved. Drinking it filled her with some hope and energy as she prepared her files for the meeting with the accountant. All of her hard work and paid time off to deal with the emergencies had climaxed to today. The question was, could she refinance her house in time and with the right interest rate? If she cannot, then she would lose her home and have to move away. The accountant's office was stale with its fluorescent lighting. Only the morning sunlight poured in through the window blinds that gave Melissa a shred of hope. She stared out to see down below the office building were many trees with birds nesting in them. Melissa marveled at how these winged animals seemed to have no worries in this world, only nature to feed them, the blessings of the Creator to the creation. Melissa wondered if she could be a bird. The accountant flipped through the files and then held up a pen for Melissa to sign. He said, "It looks like the bank loan officer will agree to it. Your accounts and assets will barely get you over the finish line. It looks like you will be able to keep your house." Tears came to Melissa's eyes as overwhelming emotions filled her. The incredible fear and angst she felt all these weeks left her body and melted away. "Are you sure?" she asked. "Today is a miracle," replied the accountant. "Now you need to get to work and do even more." Melissa signed the papers, stood up smiling, and eagerly shook his hand. "Thank you. I am incredibly grateful." This divine rescue gave Melissa the extra boost of hope she needed. That night she pored over her plans to start a new business. She needed to transition from her office job, where she worked for someone else, to become what she dreamed of. However, there was the nagging fear yet again that came to her. What if the other shoe drops again, she thought. The wound of the loss still ached in her heart. Melissa did her best to push down the pain. She learned to always bury things that bothered her, but this issue still would not go away. Countless papers and folders covered Melissa's dining room table. All of her research and business plans lay before her. "All I need is someone to help me with marketing," mused Melissa. Social media marketing wore on her, however. She didn't like the hassle of constantly posting. "I need help," Melissa said out loud as she stared out the window. The moonlight shone through her bedroom window as Melissa headed to bed. Exhausted both mentally and physically, Melissa wondered what kind of sleep she would have. Any sleep at that. With a tired voice, Melissa called out, "Dad, you would know what to do." And with those words, she instantly fell asleep. In her dreams, Melissa found herself floating on a raft in the middle of the ocean, with the waves rocking her boat up and down. The moonlight still shone down, and Melissa sat up to look around. Countless stars filled the sky with the ever-so-bright Milky Way. The aurora borealis with its neon green and purple ripples filled the sky. Melissa gazed at its beauty. "Wow," she said. The waters rocked the raft up and down, and all at once it moved as if a magical current took off. Melissa quickly grabbed the edges of the raft and looked around as she wondered what was happening. Suddenly, 2 orcas with their dorsal fins popped up out of the water, one on each side of the boat. They seemed to usher her raft and pull it toward the horizon. "Hey, what are you guys doing?" The orcas, with Melissa's raft in tow, increased in speed, and soon they were going incredibly fast. Water spray kicked up and soaked Melissa's face with awe written all over it. Off in the distance, Melissa could see a small island appear with palm trees on it, and a tiny house with a light shining inside. The orcas brought the raft to the edge of the sandy shore and moored the vessel. Melissa got off and stood on the sand and turned to the orcas. "Thank you," she offered. The orcas returned with some breaths of air, and they dove under the water's surface. Melissa saw them go, and she looked at the little house. It was made of wood and covered with palm tree branches. Fear and curiosity mixed in her emotions. The warm yellow light in the window told her someone was home, but should she investigate, thought Melissa. It was time again to make another decision, Melissa realized. She already demonstrated great courage and perseverance, but she still did not like dealing with the unknown. But in front of her was the house in her dream. She pinched herself and asked aloud, "Am I awake or am I dreaming?" Melissa stepped up to the door of the house and knocked. "Hello?" "Come in," said a warm, familiar voice. Melissa opened the door, and sitting in a large wooden rocking chair covered in pillows and blankets was an older man she thought she knew. She was surprised as the man stood up and bowed before her. He lifted her hand to his mouth and kissed it. "My lady, I am pleased to see you here. Come, sit down." He pointed to the table that had 2 mugs on it. "It's too late for coffee, so I made you some delicious hot chai tea. Care to join me?" This news from the host and the smell of the hot chai tea delighted her. "Oh my, yes, thank you." Melissa sat down across from the older man and said, "Are you my father?" The old man smiled, looking down, and stirred his mug with his spoon. "I am many things, my dear. You can call me Abba." Emotions filled Melissa's heart, and with a cracked voice she asked, "Why did he have to die?" The older man looked up to see tears in her eyes. "Why did my dream have to die?" The man nodded his head, and with compassion on his face, he leaned forward and said, "Some assignments in life are not known at the time of change. I am bringing you to a course correction. What happened was not my will, but the will of another. I am seeking to win your heart again by coming to help you." This time, anger rose in Melissa's heart, and she blurted out, "You didn't have to kill him. You could have protected him, protected me." In a rush, Melissa stood to her feet and went to the door. Just as she was about to leave, the older man called out, "Running away again?" These words froze Melissa's in her tracks. She knew this pattern. She understood what she did in the midst of great pain. "Turn to me," requested the man. "I am not your enemy." Tears poured down from Melissa's eyes, and she broke down, kneeling on the ground. The older man came to her level and put his arm around her and whispered, "Your deep pain is mine. I will carry you. I will be your burden bearer. One of my faces is the ox. You don't have to take the load anymore." Melissa's grief rose in her chest and out of her body. The grief floated out of her face like a purple mist of energy and twisted and turned in the air. The older man reached up with his hand like a cup and scooped up the grief and put it in his chest. The purple mist energy dissolved into the man's body as he closed his eyes, and his face showed the incredible emotion that Melissa felt. "I felt this pain too. It is mine now. Come to my chair." Like a little precious girl, Melissa held Abba's hand, and he sat on the big rocking chair. She crawled into his lap and placed her head on his chest. "Long ago I told you bedtime stories that made you fall asleep. Long ago I brought you gifts from heaven and placed them in your heart." Melissa felt incredible comfort and closed her eyes. She could hear Abba's heart beating in his chest. "Long ago I made you promises, and I will keep them." Abba rocked the chair back and forth as he continued to love on his daughter. "But now, not for long, you will finally see the manifestation of your promises. This has been a harsh season, but now comes the promised land, my dear. Melissa was fully asleep on his chest. She was dreaming inside a dream. The work of agony leaving her soul was the purpose of this encounter. Its release was the exact thing she needed, but even more was the love of her father. The next morning, the coffee machine turned on and its aroma woke up Melissa. Drowsy, Melissa entered the kitchen and rubbed her eyes. She picked up the mug from the coffee machine and tasted it. "Chai tea?" declared Melissa. "This isn't dark roast, it's chai." Melissa froze and said, "Oh my God." All of the memories of her dream with the father returned to her. Shock and amazement overwhelmed her as she sat down at the table. How did my coffee machine make chai tea? Melissa looked in the beans container with its remaining dark roast. She shook her head in wonder. Melissa put her hand to her chest and felt it. She gasped, "It's gone. The pain, it's gone." Melissa got quiet and looked down at the table with all of its papers and flyers. She nodded with confidence on her face and said, "This plan, it will absolutely work." 4 weeks later, Melissa gave her notice at her job and opened up her new business. She was able to network with an online marketing group, and together the word got out. Customers soon came, and Melissa made even greater progress. Revenue filled her accounts, and soon the business was booming. It was better than expected. One night, Melissa again looked out the window of her bedroom as the moonlight shone down. She saw the stars and the trees sway in the air. Gratitude filled her, and she put her hand to her heart and whispered, "Thank you, Abba." Inceptio. So Inceptio is not the end, it's the beginning. That's what it means in Latin. So while we regroup, and as you process, as we transition to talking, this story is meant to give you a sense of where you are and where you potentially could go forward. And that's why I hand you your future. So how are you doing, Melissa?
I have 3 pages of notes of what you said.
Okay.
That's come through. So yeah, it's really interesting. It definitely does kind of where we've been this last year and where we're going.
Mm-hmm.
But then also revisiting some of where we were to come back.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well,
Do you want me to go into more detail?
yes, please do. I'm very curious. And just like I said to the audience, I've never met you before. So I hope that you can connect the dots for me and for the audience. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
A lot more made sense than I thought it would.
Oh wow.
Okay. The beginning, you talk about liars and greatest loss, and the great price of debt and all of that and refinancing. So this last year, we've been building a house, and it has not gone as planned. Who was our contractor was not transparent with what he was doing with our money. And we ended up having to, and
You
that
ended
has
up having
hit
to
us
what?
financially. Part ways with him. Yeah. So I spent my summer peeling back the onion of a mess that he left behind, and working with the bank to get us back on track. But a lot has disappeared.
Wow.
A lot. So I think that if I were to say how much, people would not believe me. That's sincere truth. When you move from California to Minnesota, you think you're going to move to this great new lifestyle, everything cheap. And in many ways it is. In many ways it is, from like kids sports and a cost of things like that. The cost of land tax and property taxes is way cheaper here than it is in California. But when that it doesn't feel like it anymore. So you start looking at everything of like, oh my gosh, like you start questioning a lot. This last year, why did we move? Because I I have every morning I get and I go downstairs, and you reference coffee a lot. I have not drank coffee since January 2020, after my breast cancer treatment.
Okay.
So 2019, I went through breast cancer and was treated, and went into 2020 completely changing all of my habits in health and wellness, because I did not cancer, or why I had cancer. So it was environmental. It was not genetic or family related. So with that, you kind of go home and you're like looking at all this stuff of like chemicals, 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 and you just lose. And so my family and I, we completely changed everything. I lost 40 pounds between January this year. Um, so the morning tea piece makes more sense to me than morning coffee. Coffee, and I always want to have it, and I will have like a fun coffee from Starbucks every once in a while. I'm still ways, but yeah, the morning tea piece really hit home with me, and the whole bank piece and the blessings of our Creator. So when I went through cancer the first time, my relationship with God really strengthened in so many ways that it just flipped. When I went into 2020, I created not only I started writing during my cancer journey, and a lot of it was my interaction ways, my husband's interaction with God, our change in our health habits, all this stuff. So the blessing of our Creator, and how you talk about that, and barely being over the finish line is so true. I think that this last year I just got into these motions of things happening, and you said, what if the other, and I've said that so many times
Wait,
to my
you cut out.
mom and
What if the what?
oh sorry, what if the other shoe drops? You
Yes.
said that in the story.
Yes.
I've said that exact phrase over this last summer, with this home build, and navigating the craziness of peeling back the onion and the financial craziness that we were discovering. It leads you to, and when you have to take legal action on things, you constantly are looking for when somebody's done something so horrible to you. And so I kept saying, what if the other shoe drops? When is the other shoe going to drop? So I kept like this whole summer, I just kept walking around this like bubble of like anxiety, and like, I don't know how to explain it, just constantly like checking the mail. What bad thing is going to happen next?
Oh, wow.
So you talk about starting a new business, and so one of the things that kind of caught me was, when I was looking for healthy products, I had a colleague, an old colleague, and share with me an online multi-level marketing business.
Okay.
And she's like, hey, you have these products, they're really good. And so I checked it out, and I actually ended up going into that business myself, and became an independent consultant with it. And a lot of people use social media, Instagram, all the little dances and the things and the jazzies, and that is not me. And Jurri, when I met today, you're like, are you okay? Like, are you ready for this? And I'm like, I'm just really reserved things. And it's but that's, seeing me do the song and dance in front of a camera on Instagram is like not me. I'm very polished because I like to joke and jab, but I'm very poker faced in many ways. So that approach to getting these products has not been for me, and so I've been taking more of a holistic relationship route with that, this last year, just because of all the chaos, I've really let that just go to the side, and I've let that go. Over Thanksgiving, so the last year or two, I've also been dealing with back issues, the chiropractor, and didn't know what was going on. I've never had back issues, hip issues, or anything like that before. Thought it was of just tweaking, and I'm very active. And over Thanksgiving, my back got to a point where I could barely walk, sit, lay. I had to force my way into an MRI through the emergency room and found that my cancer has not been gone for the past 3 years. So I've been walking around for 3 years with cancer. Body. I had an entire cancerous tumor eat my entire T5 vertebrae and push my spinal cord out. So my spinal cord was like my spine like this. And I had to go into the hospital, went through crazy surgery. I'm still wearing a brace. I've only been out of this. So this Thursday, I am going in for surgery to have my brain tumor removed. So I found that I had not only cancer in my spine, brain, a second part of my spine, and in my hip.
Wow.
So it's been wild. And I didn't tell you any of that.
No, you did not. This is news
no,
to me.
So, surprise info. But that experience being in the hospital, my husband had an experience where he had a dream. Jesus was sitting at the edge of my bed, and he was reading a book, and he slammed it shut, and he put his hands over my head, and all the cancer out of my brain like sparkled out of my head.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I had an occurrence where an occurrence where there were multiple people and at the very end was my father-in-law who's passed. And he was leaning over the table that, they can slide right up to you. He was like leaning over it, and he's like, "We're fighters in this family. We don't give up." And my husband, very similar dream to that when I had breast cancer in 2019. So it was weird that we had this same type of occurrence, but in different visions of him, and what he looked like in different phases of his life. So that was really interesting. But this next phase of cancer, like, my relationship with God has just been blown up. Has just been blown completely. So when you talk about like this small island in the house, and I don't like the unknown, I sure as heck do not like the unknown.
Right.
That has just been me, always been me. I just don't handle not knowing and not being in control of the plan very well. So learning to let go of that has been huge. But the course correction and winning your heart again, I think that definitely this moment and season that I'm in of just kind of coming back with my faith being even bigger and moving, and just keeping my head down, keeping focused, like keeping like focused on my care plan, moving forward with this house and the life that we were supposed to have here, and kind of what we envisioned.
I hear you. I hear your heart.
Yeah.
And do you have more notes for the rest of the story?
No, I guess the only thing to kind of add to that is, like, we ended up moving here completely unexpected. Like, people would always say, "Would you ever leave California?" And we lived in San Diego in a beach community, and it was an absolutely amazing life. But at what price? At what price do you say enough as it comes to just that grind that it takes to live there, and wanting a simplified life? We were in a great position. Like, we were moving free direction. We had a great, church community, great school, like great friends, everything there. And in August, I was doing my daily devotionals, and 3 days in a row, I just had this overwhelming message: move back to Minnesota, move back to Minnesota, move back to Minnesota. And it happened 3 days in a row. And on day 3, I went upstairs to my husband just bawling.
Oh.
And I was like, we have to move back. And he was like, okay.
Wow.
And he works in the golf industry. So imagine a golfer in 9 months of the year being winter and cold.
Yep.
Pretty much. So
wow.
So yeah, there's I have 3 pages of bullets here of just things that you said through the story that are just crazy. So
Oh wow.
yeah, it's pretty cool.
So what's your takeaway from the story before I dive into talking with you?
Yeah. I think not to give up on the bigger picture and the purpose of moving here. You know, when you get excited about something, you create this vision, and the vision wasn't not only simplicity, but also like leveraging the social marketing side of the business in a way to impact other people in their health in the same way that it's impacted me and changed my life so much. So I think to not give up on that is kind of what I hear of, like, impacting other people's lives through like healthy living, but also from a spiritual perspective of just using everything that I've been through in my cancer journey to just talk realistically about, you know, not only just the health and how important it is to keeping your body healthy, but also the relationship with God as part of that process and moving forward. Yeah. In that journey.
Wow. So you wrote down 3 pages of notes of things that are in your life that are in the story. When you realize that, and you know I've never met you before, how does that make you feel about your heart with your relationship with God? How does that make you feel?
I tell myself every night, and there's something else that you said in here too about before going to bed. Every night when I go to bed, I say, God, I know you have a bigger plan, that I'm going to make it through this season and through this step, and then I'm going to make it through this surgery. Then I'm going to make it through. I think that's the thing, is that God has a bigger plan. Never did I imagine that my plan was going to go the way this last year did.
Right.
And it did, but I know that there's a bigger plan.
Good. You said something a moment ago, a couple minutes ago, about keeping your head down. I'd like to point out to you, Melissa, that in the end scene of the story, while you're on the island, you crawled into Abba's lap and you put your head down. What were you doing in the story? What were you listening to? Do you remember? You were listening to Abba's heartbeat. You had your head down. And what I want to encourage you with is that your situation is a significant situation. But God is coming to do a divine rescue. And that, like I told you in the audience, that I've never met you before, and I wrote this story last night. And there are countless things that you've listed off in your notepad that are in this story. Now, let's just take that for what it's worth. If God can communicate to me in a creative, prophetic story for you all those things, then that says to me, as the conduit for you, that He is fully aware of your situation, your health, and He's communicating from heaven hope, that He's communicating heaven healing and restoration. And I think that the significance of tonight is for you is that He wants you to be in His lap, listening to His heartbeat. And in the story, you're dealing with grief, and you're dealing with it in a variety of ways. And in your natural life, today, you're dealing with grief in other ways. So there are parallels of grief in the natural and in the prophetic story. But what's beautiful is that you broke down in the story, and he came to you and put his arm around you, and he pulled out of you the grief. I find it interesting that he pulled it out of your face, and then he cupped it in his hand and pulled it and put it into his chest. You said that you or your husband had a dream or a vision that the cancer would just be dissolved away in your brain.
Yeah, my husband had a dream that Jesus put his hands like this over my head and took the cancer out of my brain.
And here is confirmation of that vision in this story. So I would hold on to him. I would hold on to his heart. I would get close to him and listen to his heartbeat. There's not much action for you to take but just to rest. You have been diligent by taking care of your body. You've been eating well. You've been staying away from the chemicals, you said. You have been following through with your prognosis and your plan. But ultimately, Abba has come to you. Your father, or your husband saw Jesus, who is the healer. He's the great physician. And now Father has come to you. Holy Spirit gave me the dream or the story. So you have all three working in this matter for you. Okay? So Father himself has come to you. And he wants to win your heart again. And so the seriousness of this is real. It is true. But there's a greater truth. And I like to look to the story of the Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe. Okay? Do you remember that story from Narnia, from C.S. Lewis?
Yeah. Yeah.
When
we watch Narnia.
Yeah. So who is Cancer in that story? It's the White Witch who's created an eternal winter. And guess who shows up? Aslan. And Aslan sacrifices himself for the sin, for the curse, or the violation against the laws of Narnia. And the two girls, Susan and Lucy, find the dead Aslan on the stone table. And then the mice eat up the string or the ropes, and he's free. And then all of a sudden, the broken table and the dead lion comes back alive. And the girls ask, "How did you come back from the dead?" And Aslan explained that the witch uses magic, but there is a deeper magic that he operates by. And I want you to know that there's hope for you, that you hear me out. I'm not talking about witchcraft. I'm not talking about New Age. I'm talking about the Lord. I'm talking about that he has come to you as a father to give you hope, to give you a deeper magic that, like C.S. Lewis talks about, the same thing that raised Aslan from the dead. And what is that? The resurrection power of his life. So I'm putting my faith out there for you, that if God can give you a prophetic story, who I've never met you before in my entire life, and given you all these words of knowledges and pieces of wisdom in the story, that he is after your heart first, that he would win your heart back and to give you the strength and hope that you need to endure and to overcome in this time. Does that make sense to you?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, just hearing the story, and just so much of it is aligned to just everything that we've gone. So, reaffirming to keep persistent, I think, on that path. It is so easy to get intertwined up into, when things are going bad, just being so obsessed with all of that and being scared. And then that time to truly sit and be with God. So
yes, because you've done everything that you know to do and all your knowledge and ability, and he will have to carry you. That's why he says in the story, I am the ox So in the book of Revelation, there's the four faces of God. There is the eagle, the lion, the man, and the ox. And many Christians think, oh, he's just got weird faces, and he's got four of them all looking around. Well, in the same way a prophetic story is to be understood, it's meant to be understood symbolically. What is the function here? So in this case, the face of God for you is the ox. It's not a literal ox. It's the function of an ox. It is the burden bearer. It is the one who carries the load and does the work of the harvest. And I think that is the one of the biggest takeaways for you, is that he has come to you as Father in the form of ox, the function of ox, where he will be your burden bearer. He will carry you. And then he places you on his chest. And you said earlier, I put my head down. You need to be practical about that. Not physical, but practical. Put your head down and listen to his heartbeat. And here's the beautiful thing. You've been given a prophetic story that resonates with his heart. And in this story, you hear his heartbeat. I have found out recently, I've been struggling with my own grief. I had a very good friend of mine die suddenly just before I left California. And it was in the time that I lost my job in Los Angeles. I lost my job on a Thursday, and my close mentor friend died suddenly the following Wednesday. Just dropped dead. And I was trying to wrap my head around it all these years. How do I understand and reconcile the character of God and his goodness with the sudden death of my good friend Martin, and all the prophetic promises that he carried, all the things that we were seeing and operating with him in? And I wanted to understand it. I wanted to get it. And it wasn't until just recently I had an encounter with Father God where I saw that that grief was like an egg. And it was large. And it was golden. It had great engravings in it. And my friend who was leading me through this experience told me to take a marker and write down Martin's name. And I presented this egg. Now remember, the function of an egg is to give birth to something. But it never did give birth, did it? So I went to Father and I presented to him this egg. I said, this is Martin. This is my grief. This is the unanswered questions. I hand it and I present it to you. And Father took the egg and he put it in his chest, and it was like a white light, and he took it into his body, just like the grief that you are facing in your story. And then Martin showed up to me in this vision. He's in heaven, and he handed me a golden key in the palm of his hand. And Father and Martin said to me, this was your assignment. This is your intercession for him. I'm returning it to you. It is complete. And I put that key and I unlocked another egg, which had to do with the death of my dream, the death of my destiny. And that transitioned into me being transformed into other clothing. All awful clothing was torn off of me, and I was given a suit, and I was dressed really nice. And then there was a third egg, and it was a walking stick. It transitioned into a walking stick. And I knew that the death of my dream and the death of my destiny didn't really die. And then the third egg represented the path my life has taken. I didn't like that. I didn't like the way my path went. It was dead. My mentor, my financier friend died suddenly. I lost my dream. I lost my destiny. And I lost the death of where my life was taken. And he gave me a walking stick and says, go. Your journey's not over. Okay? So what does this mean for you? It means that I identify with grief for you, and that your dream is not over. And so what happens with a prophetic story is that it gives you a sense of where you were and where you're going and who you are. And the story always ends with not the end, but inceptio. It means that I'm giving you, Melissa, permission to dream again, permission to live again, and that you have a future. And other prophetic people before me such as other people like Kim Clement, I don't know if you know that name, or other ministers who prophesy. If God can show you your future and you're looking much better there than you look right now, that means that you have a future and that you can live to see it happen. So this story is God's heartbeat for you. It is you to listen to him. And it is meant to give you encouragement and strength that you do have a future and that you will go forward into it and see your dreams come true. Your life sucked. Mine did too. We had things that we were promised that didn't make any sense. I also find it interesting because the language that was blowing my mind when I received it, he said, what did he say? Let me find it real quick. Some assignments in life are not known at the time of change. I'm bringing you a course correction. And what I found is that the whole point about the eggs and those journeys is I was looking to wrap my head around it through understanding. And I realized after this encounter is I didn't need to understand logically anything. All I needed was an encounter with the Father. And that's what's going on for you tonight. Melissa, you don't have to figure this out. It's not your job, and you can't. And I had to come to that place of realization too. And so now, it's not about figuring it out. It's about an encounter in a relationship with him. And I believe that that is what is being presented to you in your story. Do you have any thoughts about what I've been saying at all? Any comment or curiosity?
No, I think the only comment that comes from just like the future and the longevity of it is more around this. Was a fellow at the facility I was at first at the hospital system. That's not where I normally get my care. It's where I landed as part of living in a small town and getting transferred to the nearest large hospital that performs the type of surgery I needed. She came in my room while my husband was gone and asked me if I wanted my prognosis. And being, completely drugged up, I'm like, what? She's like, well, do you want your prognosis? And just like, sure. Just not really following what she's talking about. I was like, sure, going along with the conversation. And she goes, well, just, we don't have everything back on your tumor. But just based on, we have now and putting it in the system into the database, you have 13 months to live. And I looked at her just blank-faced. And I was like, no. Like, my mind was just like, no. No. Like, just, it was like, my mind, like, was not even processing that that's what she had said, because in my mind and in my heart, like, the complete wrong result. And when she left the room, that's when I went into having those visions of all these people in the room, ending with my husband, with my father-in-law.
Wow.
And I've had just these feelings of like nonstop, like that she's been wrong this whole time. I ended up transferring my care to my normal hospital, ended up with an amazing neurosurgeon and, my regular doctor, who were like, why would someone tell you that?
Especially
like,
by yourself.
No,
that's just so bad.
Yeah. But just knowing, like, with the right treatment and the right steps of the process, that I have life ahead of me, and just kind of that overwhelming sense in you tell people, oh, I'm having neurosurgery on Thursday, and they're like, oh my gosh, like, that's just, and I say it very nonchalantly, and that's sincerely how it is I'm just going in for the next step of the process.
Wow.
Of it, I'm excited for it. I'm excited to have that piece of cancer out of my brain, because the other hospital told me that they were not going to do that, and really never even talked to me about it. The minute I transition, they were like, why wouldn't you? You're young, you're healthy. I have cancer. I'm not like, quote, healthy in the normal sense, but I'm in very good shape to be doing this. Why wouldn't you take it out? It would increase the longevity of your life.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's like, I'm just going in on Thursday and doing this. It's like excitement and peace about it.
Wow.
So it's like
Is
when
is
you
it
talk
this
about the
Thursday?
future and having a future, that's, yep.
I
Yeah.
consider it an absolute privilege to deliver this story and the timing of your situation. My goodness. I want
Thank
to
you.
point out the very first sentence of your story. You need to be judicious and discerning about who to apply this sentence to, okay? There were liars that surrounded Melissa in one of her greatest losses. So it's interesting that that's the first sentence of the story. And then it talks about the different losses that you faced. But here's the beautiful thing. That's how your story started, but let's see how you finish your story. Let's see you finish your parable. I mean, the end of it is you're alive and having gratitude with the Father. That is the destination
Yeah.
for you. And so I want to encourage you with that, and that there is a journey for you. There is a purpose, that this cannot be the end.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Wow. I know that your mother arranged this story or this gift for you. I know that she worked that out. Don't ask her to contact me. I know that she's coming up to be a guest in, I think, February. But please relay to your mom how grateful I am that your mother's gift allowed me the privilege to speak into your life and into your situation. I don't take you for granted at all, and I don't take the Lord for granted. I'm finding as this show has been progressing that more and more significant things are happening by the stories impacting people in significant ways. I've been in a training season in doing this, but now I'm seeing things shift, and you are part of that. So I want you to know I love you very much. I love you very much, and I'm looking forward to hearing
Thank you.
the finishing stories, the finishing acts of your story as you go forward, and as an overcomer. You know, I find it also just a little note that there's two whales that were pulling you to the Father. And I remember writing it last night because that kind of whale can be named two different ways: orca or killer whale. But it wasn't defined as a killer whale. It was two orcas bringing you to the Father.
When you talked about the two whales, the things that came immediately to my mind and how it carried me to that next step
Yes.
were these two. Have my breast cancer physician, who I selected with a ton of research upon moving here, and this nurse. They work together at this hospital, and they're the ones who I so desperately wanted to get back to, getting my care transitioned over to them
Yes.
versus where I was, because I knew that they were going to get me on the right path. Like, they are my people. Like, if you ever meet and you're like, wow, like, that's my person. That is exactly how I feel about these two physicians. The experience that I've as a patient, and just how they've always listened to me and taken everything I've said so sincerely. Because imagine being a 40-year-old for cancer room lobby, you're the youngest one by far.
Wow.
So, you can be taken not as serious as time by different doctors because of your age or the way you experience things in what you share. Like, so for example, like being really brittle, I've always had very strong nails, and having the doctor be like, okay, let's go get your blood work. Like, I hear you. I hear that this is something to you in the past with cancer, and you're having it again. Let's go do blood work. Like little things like that mean so much have over and over through my visits this last year have made these people my people.
Wow.
I've worked in the healthcare industry for 15 plus years in the side, so I know what good looks like, and I know what these processes are, how they're supposed to take place, right? So I'm a lot more critical than your average patient. And I when you said those orcas taking me to the right place, that's exactly what immediately came to my doctors.
Oh, wow. Wow. Well, the reason I chuckled a moment ago is I'm a punster, so I do play with words. And I know that an orca is a whale, not a fish. But when you said physician, I heard fish, physicians in the sea, or fish in the sea. It was a little wordplay in my mind, and I thought, oh, that's so cute. But the fact that you were able to identify those two orcas, and remember, they're not killer whales in your story. They are the ones that bring you life to the Father.
Killer whales because they're cancer.
What's that?
They could be killer whales. I said they could be killer whales because they're killing my cancer.
Okay, there you go. Take that. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And by the way, are these two physicians believers?
One is. The other, not sure. I've never had that conversation with her.
Okay, so
but with the one, I've only met the one virtually, and we've had amazing conversations. Yeah. So it's been pretty neat.
Okay. So I saw in my imagination when you're talking about them that these physicians are standing over you in prayer for your health and healing. I saw them like the light of the operating table, and I saw them praying and asking God to help them do their care for you. That's why I asked.
Okay.
So yeah. Well, the chat has been very quiet all this time. Alicia says, amazing story. Obviously, this is a very gripping conversation. If there's anybody in the chat still there that would like to add any comment or question to me or her, we welcome that. I mean, this is an extremely powerful time for me. It's like I deliver a story, and here I am hearing what has happened and what will happen for you, So, and as you can see by the reaction, Melissa, would you recommend anyone else getting a prophetic story?
A prophetic story, yes, I would recommend it. It's pretty cool. Just how many pieces, both big and small, that hit me in so many different ways. It's really cool.
Wow, that's great. I also want to introduce you to someone that's just in the chat. It's my mom, Gail, and she has said,
yes,
here,
I see that. I'm reading your comment.
I'm Jurri's mom. I had brain surgery 39 years ago, and God healed me of cancer. Get my cell number from Jurri. I'd love to talk to you before Thursday. We have an awesome God.
That would be great. Thanks, Gail.
Yes, I'll be able to get that to you. My mom is a miracle as well. And what we went through as a family was very difficult and life-changing. But here's the thing. Everybody's story is different, and everyone has their own journey of overcoming, and we are with you in that story, Melissa. Cool?
Yeah.
So everyone who's watched this broadcast, and if you want to have your own prophetic story, and as you can see how this has truly impacted Melissa's life in a profound way of giving her hope and strength and encouragement, if you want to receive a prophetic story from me, click the link in the description below, or go to our website, legendsofthewind.com. Go to the store and look for the product, Become a Legend. And just so you remember, these are prophetic stories, not prophetic words in a church ministry setting. These are creative pieces of art. I have written a portrait in a story form for Melissa that is using the combination of the prophetic gifting and the arts to deliver a beautiful written story from the library of heaven directly to Melissa, to speak into her life and in her situation. And I can do that for you as well. So consider doing that. Consider getting a story. Also, if you do not want to be a guest live on the show, I can work with you. I can deliver it to you privately, and you do not have to be appearing. However, being on the show has its own benefits because you have a great interaction with the audience in the chat. And also, we get to see the story being delivered for the first time to the person. And that is its own powerful experience. But either way, doesn't matter to me. I will bless you with that story. So go to legendsofthewind.com, go to our store, and look for Become a Legend. Melissa, wow. It is really nice to meet you tonight.
Yes, you too.
Yes. So we're going to wrap up the show. Do you have any final thoughts here?
I'm excited to talk to your mom before Thursday.
Cool. She can talk your ear off.
When we were talking before the show started, just how small of a world it can be. It ways, but this was really cool, and yeah, I definitely recommend it. But yeah, it was just so neat, and it was so neat to meet you and hear your story and stuff, and how you've got here. So it was really cool to meet you.
Well, it's nice to meet you too. Thank you very much. So guys, everyone, thank you for being on the show with us tonight. Thank you, Melissa, for letting me have the privilege of delivering to you your prophetic story called The Vanished Dream. But here's the cool thing. It came back. It is not gone forever.
Yeah.
So everyone, thank you so much, Mom. Thank
Yes.
you for your comments to Melissa, and we're looking forward to hearing your story, connecting. Everyone, thank you very much for watching the show. Melissa, do not hang up. There's a 2-minute closing piece of music. So thank you, guys, everyone. We'll talk to you soon on the next broadcast. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.